introduce Kelly?
Yes, I will. Kelly is someone I've gotten to know over the last 3 months. She is become a friend. She is a mom of a son who she'll tell you about him, but the challenges they've gone through as a family, they made a decision just in the last 6 months or 8 months or so that they were going to turn their challenges into a messaging for people like us on this call today so we can learn about the dangers of Delta-8 and take these into consideration as we create awareness in our community and create policy in our community. With that, I will turn it over to Kelly. Kelly, you're on.
Okay. Thank you for having me. Make sure I'm unmuted. There we go. Hi, everyone. My son was going into his senior year of high school. He was not even a month into being 18 years old. And on June 18th of 2021, he was at an outing with some friends. He was near his curfew. And let me backtrack a little bit. My son was never one to try anything. He was never one to get in trouble. He wasn't a drinker. He wasn't a partier. He went to a local truck meet where they have permission to meet at a local park and kind of show off their trucks and hang out. It is regulated. And he was offered Delta-8. I had never heard of this. I don't know if he had at that time or not, but he was told, you know, this is marijuana. Everybody tries it. Everybody does it. At some point in their life, this is safe. And going back again, they had just turned 18. All the people that he was hanging out with were about that age. And he hit it 3 times for the first time, for the only time. He then left maybe 5 minutes after hitting the vape. He left to come home. He was driving his best friend and he started to not feel well. And like I said, this was probably 5 minutes after hitting the vape. His best friend proceeded to call me and said that my son, they were on the side of the road. My son was on the phone with 911. He was not feeling well. We rushed to the scene, and when we got there, the paramedics had told us that with finding out with other friends, like I said, I never heard of Delta-8. I'm asking what's wrong with him. I am completely terrified. I'm asking everyone. There were several teenagers around that came and showed up, and they were trying to disperse everyone from the scene. And I was told that he tried Delta-8. At this point, I am asking, what is Delta-8? I didn't know. While the paramedics are assessing my son, we get over to my son, my husband and I, and the paramedics say, we've got to go. He is in a life-threatening situation. And I'm like, what's in this? Was it fentanyl? What is Delta-8? And they're like, no, it's synthetic marijuana. It's a form of marijuana that is absolutely dangerous. And this is what we're seeing is happening, but we need you to get back here, tell your son to hang on. He was screaming. He was delusional. He was in and out of it. The most terrifying moments of our life. Because he had just turned 18 years old, we could not ride with him to the hospital. So at that time we got back there and I'm like, you know, where's he at with the medical emergency? What is his body going through? And they said he's trying to currently stroke. He is in the middle of starting to stroke. His blood pressure was skyrocketing and there was a chance he was going to go into cardiac arrest at any moment. So we told him to hang on. We told him that we loved him. As we were getting out of the ambulance, they kept telling us, we got to go. We got to take him now. I was told later that they got our phone number as we were getting into the car. They got our cell phone number from my husband. because they did not think my son was going to make it to the hospital. And when we got in the car, my husband told me this, and I'm clenching the cell phone, praying to God that we don't get a call from them, because they were going to call us if things changed and he did not make it. Once we got to the hospital, we actually beat the ambulance there somehow. When we got there, we saw them. They pulled in right behind us. We met them at the bay. I look over, my son's being pulled out on a stretcher, and he does have the paddles across his chest. The paramedic then proceeds to come over to us and said that we've got him somewhat stabilized. However, they need to take him in. They need to work on him. It's going to be a few minutes before you guys could go back there. And because of COVID at the time, only one of you could go at a time. But you can't go in there while they're working on him. He said, but I will tell you this. He said, you know, before you think of any punishment, before any of that runs through your mind, he's going to need a lot of support. And excuse my language, but he said it took a hell of a lot to save his life in that ambulance. And we did absolutely everything that we could to keep him here. And, you know, we almost lost him, and he's going to need a lot of support. Some things he's going to remember, some things he's not. And he said that he would keep us informed, because he knew how tragic and how just very critical that this situation was. My son was still fighting. And so he was going to be like the liaison to go back and forth between where they were working on him at in the room and us, and letting us know how he's doing until a nurse came out. I couldn't tell you how long it took. It seemed like forever. I had tunnel vision. All I did was pray and pray that God kept him here some way, somehow, that I would take him any way that I could get him. My husband was holding me up. We were holding each other up. Finally, after some time, a nurse came out and said that one of us could go back there. My husband and I chose for me to go. As I'm entering the doors, so let me backtrack again. My son was a very mild, mannered, shy young man going into this, not one to be outspoken to people that he did not know. So as I'm going into the doors to get to where he was, I could not get there fast enough. I could hear him screaming. I could hear him cussing, which is something he's never done in front of us. I could hear him crying, and as soon as I get to him, he is a completely different child. He was hallucinating. His emotions were up and down. He was laughing one minute. He was clenching me the next. He was begging me for him not to die, to let him die, to hold on to him. I don't remember a time during those hours that he actually even let go of me. And then he would kind of drift off and then come back. And when he would come back, he was yelling, screaming, cussing out the nurses, everything you could imagine, every emotion that you could feel as a human, he was going through and experiencing, plus some with the hallucination. This went on for several hours as they were giving him medicine to regulate his heart rate and to regulate his blood pressure, along with monitoring. And then at some point, he did ask for my husband to come in. They allowed my husband to come in, but once my husband was able to come in, I had to leave and we could not switch again. Several hours later, I want to say it was probably 3 o'clock the next morning, he was released to us. Still hallucinating. Under the terms that they had gotten him stable enough, his heart became stable, his blood pressure became stable. So they again released him to us with him still being in the state he was, other than the blood pressure and the heart rate. Completely hysterical, completely out of his mind. We get him in the car, we're going home, and I am debating whether or not to turn around at this point to take him back. But I knew they weren't going to do anything because they were so uneducated on what was happening with him. He should have had an MRI coming in as a possible stroke victim. He did not receive an MRI because once they did his blood work, his urinalysis, and saw that the only thing in his system was a high level of THC, they kind of chalked it up to being high on marijuana, and he was going to be okay. And they basically told us to take him home and sleep it off. He should be fine in a couple hours. So we get him home, finally get him in our bed so that we could watch him overnight, because again, we were terrified. We weren't educated enough on what to ask in the hospital. We didn't know, what our life was going to be like after this happened. And he slept for about the first pretty much 48 hours. Excuse me. He slept for about 48 hours, maybe getting up once or twice to go to the restroom. So fast forwarding to where we are today, we are now 3 years into this. Our son has not been able to leave the home. He had to be put on emergency medical leave from school for his senior year of high school, finish out his senior year to do that at home online. He has severe agoraphobia, along with a slew of other phobias that would take probably an hour or so to explain and go over. This is what a one-time use of Delta-8 has done to our life. It has stripped us of memories. It has stripped him of living a life. He has not left our house, has barely left our driveway in 3 years. So I appreciate having a voice. This is not going to cure my son, but the reason for this is to spread awareness and to get these products off the shelf. And one quick last thing, how they were able to get their hands off on these on Delta-8 and on these products was they went into, the friend that gave it to him went into a vape shop. The store owner knew that he was underage, and so all they do is charge them more. Say a vape is $20, he's going to charge $40 because he knows he's selling it to an underage adult or child. And that is how they get their hands on this. And that is extremely important. So here we are today, 3 years later. He is in therapy, intensive care therapy every single week. And we are just praying that this is not permanent.
Kelly, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, one of the chief things I heard was that there was really no previous drug use.
None.
Just someone who's a son who's loved and had a lot of support, and really just took something that he thought was okay or just mildly risky. And one time in his life, 3 hits, and he's really struggled for 3 years. And in fact, I heard you say he hasn't left the house, and as you've told me separately, only in very managed, isolated incidences has he got out of the house. So thank you for your courage in sharing with that. Now we're gonna turn it over to Q&A for 5 minutes. If anyone has any questions, if we don't get to your question, we will promise to do our best to get responses to you afterward. If you have any questions, if you could raise your hand, and we'll do our best to call on you now.
Can you see the whole gallery, Michael?
That's a good question. No, could you stop sharing for just a moment, Greg? But I think anyone who raises their hand goes to the front. In fact, yes, there's Suzanne. Suzanne, do you have a question?
Yes. Hi, Kelly. Thank you so much. I just can't. I have a 23-year-old son. I very much can understand the wow, what you've been going through, just from that one moment that you wish you could rewind. Where do you live? What county, like what state?
We are in Henry County, Georgia.
Okay. And since then, have you at all, I mean, obviously you've connected with this organization. Have you at all informed anybody else about, like, are you working with anyone else to help them understand?
Yes, I have worked with a group called PAN, which is Parent Action Network. I have shared my story with them. I have also done an interview with another group that is called Every Brain Matters. And then my husband and I were also interviewed for a documentary that could possibly be coming out in September. And then again, I have reached out to several doctors, and the goal is to reach out to legislators. I have written legislators and things like that. So yes, we have shared before.
Thank you so much. This is not just, anyway, it's just, I know it's not easy to share. So I just want to say thank you, because we're all here for the same reason you are.
Thank you. And I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
While we're waiting for any additional questions, let me quickly say that Kelly mentioned the Parent Action Network. That's a national organization affiliated with Smart Approaches to Marijuana. And actually, their director, Chrissy's on the call right now. Chrissy, do you want to just take 30 seconds just to say hello and how people can get a hold of you if they want to ramp this up to a national conversation?
Sure. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Mike. And it's always good to see you, of course, and good to see you, Kelly. So as Michael said, I'm the director of the Parent Action Network, and we're actually the grassroots division of Smart Approaches to Marijuana. So that's very important. So it gives us the ties and the credibility to Smart Approaches to Marijuana and all the work that they do legislatively and through the government. And my actual role, and this is how I met with Kelly, and Michael and I work a lot together. So, you know, I forward him all Georgia parents that I possibly can, and we kind of work together to raise the voices of parents regarding the marijuana issue. But what I do on a national level is amplify family voices. Kelly's story is one of many across the country. We have at least one parent in every state across the country.
Hey, Chrissy, I hate to do this. Can I ask you to wrap up real quick?
Sure. That is angry and wants to advocate. So if anyone wants to tell their stories, learn how to tell your stories through advocacy, you can reach me at chrissy@learnaboutsam.org, and I will put that in the chat.
Excellent, Chrissy. Thank you. I'm so glad you're here, Chrissy, and thank you for introducing me to Kelly. Pam, do you have a question? You're on mute, Pam.
Oh, I want to thank Kelly for sharing. Like everyone said, that's a very sensitive matter, and my prayers are with you and your family. I just wanted to ask, though, were there any consequences to the vape shop for selling the vape to a minor? I didn't catch that.
Yes, that's a great question. We actually did try to proceed with that. However, the young man that bought it, that gave it to my son to try, has not necessarily been involved in releasing his situation. I know through the grapevine, so to speak, exactly how this was bought. But he has not come forward and said that he's willing to participate, and that because it was sold to him, it would be more so him coming forward and say this happened. However, I did reach out to our local authorities. They did do a couple of stings on the gas stations, the vape shops around here that did get busted. Unfortunately, that one was not one of them. So we are currently still trying to proceed with that.
Thank you, Kelly. Pam, thank you for the question. We're going to wrap up there for now, but we also had another message in the chat from David Rosengren, the president of Prevention Research Institute, who joined us. They're in charge of Prime for Life, drug education programs. And Kelly, David asked in the chat if you'd be willing to share your story briefly in a video that they incorporate into their drug education program. So you and I can follow up on that later.
Yeah.
There
we
any
could
other Yeah, thank you. So if there are any other questions for Kelly, please leave them in the chat or just email me afterward. And with that, I'm going to turn it. Oh, I want to make a quick announcement that for those of you who joined a couple minutes late, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. We're going to do our best to get to those questions, but promise we'll try our best to get back to you afterward.